For decades, she filled the world with polka dots and infinite mirrored rooms, turning her own mind into one of the most recognizable visual languages in modern art. Now, the artist behind that vision is gone, and the details of her final days and the cause of her death have only just been revealed to the public. This is the story of Yayoi Kusama. On August 27, 2026, the Yayoi Kusama Foundation announced what the world did not yet know: that the legendary Japanese artist had actually passed away nearly 2 weeks earlier, on August 14 at a hospital in Tokyo. She was 97 years old. The foundation's statement said it was with profound sorrow that they shared her passing, describing a lifetime devoted entirely to artistic creation across painting, sculpture, performance, fiction, and poetry. According to the foundation, Kusama continued to paint until shortly before her death, never setting aside her brush, and remained steadfast in her lifelong belief that love could save the world. The cause of death has now been confirmed as multiple organ failure. Gallerist Nobuo Ota, who represented Kusama and knew her personally, revealed that he last saw her in late July when she was already in intensive care. By that point, he said, she was no longer in a condition where she could make work, though she would still respond when spoken to. Her health had clearly been declining for weeks before her death, even as the wider public remained unaware that anything was wrong. There had been no public announcement of illness, no cancelled exhibitions explained by health concerns, nothing to suggest to fans around the world that one of the most celebrated living artists was quietly nearing the end of her life inside a Tokyo hospital. The decision to delay the announcement of her death by nearly 2 weeks was, by all accounts, a deliberate choice by her foundation and family, giving them time and privacy to grieve before the news reached the public. When the announcement finally came, tributes poured in from across the art world and beyond. The Washington Post, CNN, and the art newspaper all published extensive obituaries, describing her as an artist who evoked hallucinatory wonder, who filled the world with polka dots, and whose mirrored infinity rooms became some of the most photographed and beloved artworks of the 21st century. Colleagues and admirers remembered her not just for her instantly recognizable visual style, but for the sheer force of will that carried her from a difficult, restricted childhood in post-war Japan to the top of the international art world. According to Ota, a private funeral was held for Kusama, attended by around 20 to 25 people, primarily relatives from her hometown of Matsumoto, along with representatives from her foundation and galleries. He described her as an exceptionally strong, serious, and straightforward person, someone shaped in part by having spent her formative teenage years living through the Second World War. He recalled an almost restless, unstoppable energy in her, paired with an extraordinary work ethic that never seemed to fade, even into her 90s. A public memorial gathering has been planned for a later date, though specific details have not yet been released. Yayoi Kusama's life began on March 22, 1929 in Matsumoto in Japan's Nagano Prefecture, where her family ran a plant nursery business. From a young age, she experienced vivid hallucinations and visions, seeing fields of flowers speak to her and patterns multiply endlessly across surfaces around her. Rather than being frightened away from these experiences, she began drawing them, and the repeated nets, dots, and organic forms that emerged from those childhood visions would come to define her entire artistic career. Her family strongly discouraged her ambitions as an artist, but Kusama pursued her path regardless, eventually leaving Japan for the United States in 1957 before settling in New York City the following year. In New York, she threw herself into the city's avant-garde art scene, producing her now famous infinity net paintings alongside soft sculptures and installations built from mirrors and lights. She counted figures like Andy Warhol and Donald Judd among her friends and rivals, and despite the originality of her work and the clear influence it had on others around her, she remained something of an outsider in an art establishment that, according to those who knew her, often drew on her ideas without ever fully embracing her as an equal. Kusama was unafraid to use her art and performances to address the pressing issues of her time, including gender equality, gay rights, and the anti-war movement, staging provocative happenings that challenged the norms of the era. In 1973, Kusama returned to Japan, and in 1977 she made the choice to voluntarily admit herself to a psychiatric hospital in Tokyo, where she would go on to live for the rest of her life. Rather than stepping away from her art, she maintained a private studio near the hospital and continued working there for decades, producing an enormous body of new work well into her 90s. It was during these later years that her international fame grew to unprecedented heights. Her infinity mirror rooms, immersive installations that surrounded visitors with endlessly repeating reflections of color and light drew massive crowds at museums and galleries around the world, turning once-niche art exhibitions into some of the most talked-about cultural events of the decade. Her commercial success was equally remarkable. Her paintings routinely sold for well over $1 million, and in 2022 her piece entitled Nets sold for $10.5 million, a career milestone for an artist who had spent much of her early life on the margins of the art world. Over the course of her career, she received numerous honors, including Japan's Order of Culture and France's Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. In 2017, the Yayoi Kusama Museum opened in Tokyo, dedicated entirely to showcasing her decades of work to new generations of fans. Kusama often described herself as an artistic revolutionary, someone determined to transform her own struggles as a woman, as a Japanese artist working abroad, and as someone living openly with mental illness into a singular creative force. At the same time, she was remarkably candid about her own fears, once admitting that she was afraid all the time of everything. That honesty, paired with her boundless creative energy, is a large part of why her work resonated so deeply with people across generations and cultures. Yayoi Kusama's nearly 7-decade career reshaped what contemporary art could look like, and what an artist's relationship to their own mind could be. Our thoughts go out to her family, her foundation, her galleries, and everyone around the world who found wonder, comfort, or connection in her work.